But her grip on the coffee pot tightened, just slightly, like someone bracing for war. No one in that diner knew what those scars meant, until a stranger walked in, looked past them, and said her real name. Why had she hidden her identity for so long? And what would happen now that someone finally remembered the woman she used to be? She kept her chin up anyway, her hands steady, her apron clean. Maya Johnson had become a ghost in plain sight, moving between booths like part of the furniture. 36 years old, black, and invisible. Except when they chose to make her visible. To mock her. She'd been working the breakfast shift at June's Grill for almost 3 years, long enough to memorize how much cream the truckers liked, who didn't want onions, and which kids needed extra napkins before their pancakes arrived. But no amount of perfect service could erase the way people saw her, or refused to. Outside, the Texas sun was rising, spilling gold across cracked asphalt. Inside, the air carried the scent of burnt bacon and old stories no one told out loud. Maya adjusted the sleeve of her shirt, always pulling it just far enough to hide the tattoo on her forearm. It wasn't shame. It was survival. No one here knew about Iraq, or what it meant to hold pressure on a bleeding chest while gunfire snapped around your ears. They didn't need to know. They'd already decided what they saw when they looked at her. And then the contractors walked in. 4 of them. Loud. White. Sunburned faces and steel-toed boots. They came every morning now, sitting at table 6 like they owned it. Maya didn't flinch when one of them, Travis, called out, "Yo, Scarface! Hope you didn't drop any skin flakes in the coffee today?" The others laughed. One of them, young and cruel-eyed, added, "Better tip her good before she curses your food." Maya didn't respond. Not with her face, not with her voice. Just the slight tightening of her grip on the coffee pot. She walked over, filled their cups without a word, her movements efficient and precise, like muscle memory from another life. They didn't deserve her story. They didn't even deserve her anger. Her silence was not weakness. It was endurance. At the counter, an old man in a denim jacket shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. A mother with 2 kids whispered, ushering her children to look away. Maya had learned long ago. No one was coming to defend her. Not unless she wore the uniform again. Not unless she proved herself in blood and fire. And even then, maybe not. She turned toward the register when the door chimed. He stepped in with the quiet confidence of someone who knew how to survive. Tall, weathered, maybe early 40s. His boots tracked dust across the linoleum. A faded Marine Corps cap sat on his head, bent at the edges from years of sun. He scanned the room the way soldiers do, eyes moving fast, clocking exits, threats, open spaces. Then his gaze landed on Maya. Not on her scars. On her. He chose a booth by the window, nodding politely as she approached. Maya brought him a cup of black coffee, placing it gently on the table. "Morning," she said, her voice calm, practiced. "Thanks," he replied, eyes lingering on her forearm where, for a split second, her sleeve had shifted. The tip of a tattoo peeked through. Letters faded with time and pain. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Doubt? Memory? Before Maya could turn away, one of the contractors called out again, louder this time. "Hey, my eggs are cold. Maybe if she didn't walk like a broken robot, we'd get food on time." The laughter cut sharper this time, but the man in the booth didn't laugh. He stared at Maya's arm again, and his voice, quiet but certain, broke through the noise. "That tattoo? Is that 3rd to 5th Infantry?" Maya froze. Her heart dropped into her stomach, and for the first time in 3 years, someone had looked beyond her scars and seen something else. A soldier. A medic. A ghost from the battlefield. And just like that, her past threatened to break through the walls she'd built so carefully. The air inside June's Grill shifted. Not loudly. Not with movement. But with tension. Like the moment before a storm breaks open, when the wind stops, and everyone just knows. Maya didn't answer right away. She stared at the man in the booth, at his cap, his steady eyes, the way he sat like a man used to carrying weight heavier than memory. The contractors hadn't noticed. They were too busy congratulating themselves on their latest insult, too drunk on the silence of a room that never pushed back. The cook hadn't looked up from the grill. The mother with the kids stared into her coffee cup. Only the man in the booth was watching her. Maya's fingers gripped the coffee pot just a little tighter. "Did you serve?" he asked, voice low enough for only her to hear. "I just work here," she replied, her tone practiced, flat. The lie rolled off her tongue like muscle memory. But the question had already done damage. It had cracked something. He didn't press. Just nodded slightly and looked out the window like he hadn't seen her sleeve shift. Like he hadn't noticed the worn ink that read 3/5 INF. But she knew what he saw. What he remembered. And that made him dangerous. Maya walked away before her hands could shake. She moved behind the counter, eyes locked on the order screen, pretending to check tickets that didn't exist. Her chest was tight, her ears ringing. Not from fear, but from the rising scream of a life she'd buried. For 3 years, she had lived inside this silence, survived by being forgettable. Her scars kept people out. Her skin color kept her isolated. And that had kept her safe. Until now. The man watched her, but not with pity. With recognition. And something worse. Hope. "Excuse me," he said suddenly, loud enough to draw attention. "Can I ask your name?" Heads turned. The contractors paused. Maya looked up, eyes on her. All of them. She could lie. Could give him the name on her name tag. Brenda. The one the manager had printed wrong on her first day, and she'd never bothered to fix. But something in his tone. Something in his face. "Maya," she said quietly. "Maya Johnson?" It hit like a wave crashing through the room. Her heart punched her ribs. She hadn't heard her full name in months. The contractor named Travis raised an eyebrow. "What's this? You two know each other?" The man stood. Walked slowly toward the counter. And then, without warning, rolled up his own sleeve. A faded marine tattoo. A date inked in dark script. March 18th, 2006. Maya knew that date, because she remembered the heat, the screaming, the metal twisted into bone. She remembered throwing her body over a bleeding marine while bullets cracked the sky. And she remembered his voice, gasping, broken, calling for help while everyone else had run. "My name's Logan Price," he said softly. "You saved my life outside Ramadi." No one in the diner moved. Travis muttered, "What the hell is this? Some kind of stunt." But Logan didn't hear him. Or maybe he did, and didn't care. He turned to Maya. "You were the medic. You covered me. You held my chest together while everything around us was on fire." Maya's throat tightened. "You remember?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "I never forgot," he said. The diner was silent now. Even the clatter of silverware had stopped. Every eye in the room was watching something they didn't understand unfold right in front of them. And then, the smallest voice in the room asked the biggest question. A little girl at the table by the window looked at Maya and said, "Are you a hero?" Maya blinked. She hadn't cried since she left the base hospital. Not when she lost her career. Not when she buried her uniform in the back of a closet. But that word, hero, spoken with innocent awe from a child who hadn't yet learned the world's cruelty. That word broke something loose. She looked at the girl, then at Logan, then at her own hands. Burned, scarred, still steady. "I was a medic," she said finally. "I did my job." But the silence that followed made it clear. This job, this version of herself, was no longer hiding what came before. And for the first time since she came to this dusty little town, Maya knew. Her past wasn't done with her yet. The diner didn't go back to normal. Not that morning. Not after what had just been said. Maya felt it in the way people stared. Not with the usual judgment, but with something else now. Confusion. Curiosity. Guilt. The kind that comes when people realize they've been looking at someone all wrong. For a long time. She hated it more than the insults. Pity was worse than cruelty. Logan hadn't sat back down. He stood nearby like a man ready to defend her if he had to, and that made her furious. Not at him. At the fact that, for the first time, someone was trying, when it was already too late. "I didn't ask for this," Maya said under her breath as she refilled a coffee cup, hands tight on the pot. "I know," Logan replied gently. "But maybe you deserve it." She turned toward him, eyes hard. "You think because you remember one moment in the middle of a war, you get to decide what I deserve now?" "I think," he said carefully. "You've been carrying too much alone." Across the room, the contractors were fidgeting. Travis, red-faced, leaned back in his chair and scoffed. "You're telling me this scarred-up waitress is some kind of war hero? That's rich." Maya froze. Logan didn't. He walked straight toward their table, his boots heavy on the linoleum. "You ever get shot at?" Logan asked Travis, calm as stone. Travis laughed. "I pay taxes. That's enough." Logan's jaw clenched. "She held me together while I was bleeding out. You're sitting here drinking coffee and mocking someone who nearly died saving lives. You don't know the first thing about service. Or sacrifice." One of the other contractors muttered, "Man, we didn't know." Logan snapped. "Didn't know what? That she's a veteran? That she saved lives? That she's black? What exactly would have made her worth basic respect to you?" The room went quiet again. Even the cook had come out from the back, wiping his hands on a towel, brow furrowed. Maya's heart was pounding, not from fear, from exposure. Everything she'd worked to keep buried had clawed its way to the surface. And now, the whole room could see. She placed the coffee pot down, took a slow breath, and walked to the center of the diner. If they were going to see her, they were going to see all of her. "My name is Maya Johnson," she said, loud enough for every table to hear. "I served 2 tours in Iraq as a combat medic. I have scars because I pulled a burning soldier out of a Humvee before the ammo cooked off. That soldier was Logan Price. And yeah, I'm the one who kept him alive for 40 minutes in the middle of an ambush. No medevac, no backup, just gauze and grit." A little tremble in her voice, just enough to be real. "I came back broken, couldn't stay in the army, couldn't figure out how to be a civilian either. So I came here. I took a job serving coffee because I needed to do something that didn't involve screaming or blood. I didn't want attention. I didn't want thanks. I just wanted peace." Her eyes swept the room. "But I never got it. Not here. Not once. I've been laughed at, called names, mocked for how I look. People assumed things. Because of my scars. Because of my skin." The contractors looked away now, shame settling like grease on their collars. "And I took it," Maya continued. "Because sometimes it's easier to survive than to fight, but not today." She turned toward Logan. "You remembered. You saw me when no one else would, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not a hero. I'm tired, and I'm done being quiet." Logan nodded once, not with pride, but respect. At the back of the diner, a man slowly rose from his seat. A local, older, wore a Vietnam vet cap. He walked up to Maya and offered a hand, not for a handshake, but for her to hold, like a brother to a sister. "Welcome home, Sergeant," he said, her eyes filled with tears. Not the kind that fall, the kind that burn quietly behind a wall you've held up for years. And as Maya stood there, hands trembling and truth bared, the silence in the diner wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the weight of something real. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The clatter of utensils, the hum of the fridge motor, even the sizzle of bacon on the grill. All of it faded beneath the quiet storm Maya had just unleashed. And then, it started. Not loudly. Not all at once. A slow shuffle as the old Vietnam vet placed his hand on her shoulder and gave a quiet nod. Then, a middle-aged woman who had once turned her back on Maya's scars, looked up from her booth, eyes shining. Her son stood beside her, awkward, maybe 17, the same age as some of the boys Maya had treated overseas, and he gave a silent, uncertain salute. For the first time since she'd walked into June's grill years ago, Maya wasn't a shadow. She was seen. But the weight of it was unbearable. She backed away from the center of the room, heart pounding, heat crawling up her neck, her body screaming to disappear again. The diner was too loud now with quiet, too full, too heavy. She slipped behind the counter and into the kitchen, hands shaking as she braced herself against the steel prep table. Logan followed. She didn't turn when he entered, just kept her eyes on the stainless steel, as if the reflection might give her something solid to hold on to. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I was fine staying invisible." He didn't respond right away. Let the silence speak for him. Then he said, "But you weren't." She exhaled, shaky. "I built this quiet for myself. I made peace with the way people look at me. I made peace with the names." "No, Maya," Logan said softly. "You didn't make peace. You made space. A hiding place. That's not the same thing." She turned then, eyes burning. "You think I haven't tried? You think I don't wake up every night hearing their screams? Or seeing my hands covered in someone else's blood? You think I wanted to be the one who lived?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't save 17 people, Logan. I lost 17 pieces of myself." He didn't try to comfort her. He just stood there, letting her grief fill the space. Finally, she wiped her face with the back of her arm and muttered, "Now everyone thinks I'm some kind of symbol." "They don't," he said. "They just saw what they refused to see before." Outside, the mood in the diner had shifted again. The contractors sat stiff and red-faced. Travis kept glancing toward the exit, as if hoping to escape the weight of what had just unfolded. But escape doesn't come easy when guilt clings like grease. The elderly cook, Jerome, who'd been quiet for most of the morning, stepped out from the kitchen doorway. He had known. Maybe not the details. But something in Maya's discipline had always told him she was more than a waitress. And now, standing in front of her with flour on his apron and ache in his bones, he said, "You've got the rest of the day off, with pay. Anyone gives you trouble in this place again, they're not welcome here." Maya looked at him. The last time she'd heard that kind of tone, it came from a commanding officer during a field extraction. It wasn't kindness. It was protection. And she didn't know what to do with it. Logan stepped forward, lowered his voice. "This isn't over." "I know," she said. "People are going to talk. The story's out now." "I know. Are you ready?" She took a long breath. But I'm not hiding." Outside the window, the sun had risen higher, but clouds were moving in. That thick, silver-gray Texas kind. Not threatening yet. Just a reminder that weather always changes. Back in the dining area, the energy had settled into a strange stillness. Like a wound had been opened, and everyone could feel the air touch it. The customers didn't know how to act. Whether to say thank you or apologize or pretend nothing had happened at all. But one thing was clear. Silence wouldn't protect them anymore. As Maya stepped out of the kitchen, apron still on, hair still tied back, but eyes different. Something happened that no one expected. Travis stood up. He walked slowly to the counter, not swaggering, not smirking, just stripped bare. "I didn't know," he said, voice hoarse. "You didn't care," Maya replied. Calm. "Director." "You're right," he said. "But I do now. And I'm sorry." Maya stared at him. Not for long. Just long enough for him to feel the weight of his words. "Sorry doesn't fix it," she said. "I know," he whispered. Then he turned and left, head bowed, silence following him like a shadow. And with that, the walls Maya had built for 3 years cracked open. But not to collapse. To let something new begin. By noon, the diner was full again. Not with customers, but with energy. Something had changed. The story had spread like spilled coffee across cracked linoleum. Not gossip. Reverence. Word of a woman with fire in her skin and steel in her veins, hiding in plain sight behind an apron and a coffee pot. And people came. Not just the locals. A man in dress blues arrived first. Army, young, tight posture, carrying a silence that said he'd seen things. He didn't order anything. Just walked straight to Maya's station, stood at attention, and saluted her like he'd known her his whole life. "Sergeant Johnson," he said, voice steady. "I heard what happened. It's an honor." Maya didn't know how to respond, so she didn't speak. Just nodded slowly and returned the salute. A gesture that felt strange and sacred at the same time. Like a ritual you thought you'd forgotten until your body remembered it for you. Then came another, an older woman, civilian clothes, eyes filled with quiet grief. She placed a single folded flag on the counter and said, "My son was in 3rd to 5th. He didn't make it home. But his letters mentioned a medic who ran toward fire like it couldn't touch her. I always wondered if that was you." Maya's knees almost buckled. Jerome came out from the kitchen and placed a chair behind her, just in case. She didn't sit. Logan stayed close, not as a shield, she didn't need one, but as a witness. He'd lit the match, and now he stood quietly, letting the fire tell its story. The contractors didn't come back that day. They wouldn't come back for a long time. But others filled the space they left behind. Veterans from nearby towns. Families with folded flags. Old soldiers who remembered what it felt like to be invisible in your own country. Bob, the manager, finally emerged from his office with something trembling in his hand. A medal. Not his. Not Maya's. But one that had sat in a dusty drawer for years. A customer's forgotten relic from Vietnam, left behind one winter. Bob had kept it, unsure why, until now. He placed it on the counter beside Maya's register. "No one in this town," he said, voice cracked with emotion, "will ever question what you are again." The wall behind the counter, once filled with faded menus and employee notices, was bare by the end of the afternoon. Bob had taken everything down. In its place, he pinned a new sign. Handwritten. Simple. "Veterans eat free, especially her." A beat passed. Then applause. Not forced. Not loud. Just soft clapping that spread like rain. Uncertain at first, then growing with conviction. Like the sound of a wound beginning to heal. Maya stood there completely still. Her apron stained with coffee, her hands trembling with more than exhaustion. This wasn't what she wanted. But maybe it was what she needed. She turned to Logan, who had said so little and done so much. "You brought this down on me," she said, voice dry, tired. "I didn't bring it," he replied. "I just stopped pretending I didn't see you." She looked at him, and for once didn't flinch. "I didn't save you," she whispered. "I was just doing what I was trained to do." "I know," he said. "But I never got to say thank you." "You just did." Outside, the sun broke through the gray clouds, a narrow beam of gold slicing across the diner floor. It lit up the corner of the wall where the new sign hung, casting a long shadow behind it. And for a moment, everything felt still. Not quiet, not peaceful, but still. Like a battlefield after the last shot's been fired, when the smoke starts to clear and you realize you're still alive. 6 months later, the diner was quieter, but never the same. There was a new rhythm now. One built not on routine, but on remembrance, on presence, on respect earned the hard way. Maya still worked the morning shift, still wore the same black slacks and white shirt, still pulled her hair back into that same tight bun. But people said her walk had changed, not faster, not slower, just fuller. Like the weight she carried had found a place to rest. The wall behind the counter had become something sacred. Dozens of framed photos now lined it. Soldiers, medics, letters, medals, dog tags, each one pinned with care. Not decoration, acknowledgement. Stories once hidden now stood in plain sight, because one woman refused to stay invisible. She hadn't planned for any of it. But that's how most real change begins. With something unplanned, something painful, something that refuses to be ignored. Logan came through town often. Every few weeks he'd stop by for black coffee and a few hours of silence shared at the corner booth. He never stayed long. Didn't need to. The bond between them wasn't the kind that needed words. It had been forged in fire, and fire remembers. One Friday morning, a young man in uniform stepped in, fresh out of boot camp, face still holding teenage softness beneath the discipline. He walked up to Maya, nervous, hands shaking slightly. "Ma'am," he said, "I just wanted to say, you're the reason I joined. My cousin told me your story, said you were the bravest medic they ever knew." Maya smiled. "A small thing. Thank you," she said. "Now go eat something before you pass out." He laughed, and the sound felt like spring in a room that had weathered a long, silent winter. Outside, the parking lot held new cars, veterans, families, strangers who had read about her in the local paper or seen the clip that went viral after someone filmed Logan's salute. People came not to gawk, but to listen, to remember, to ask how they'd missed someone like her for so long. The contractors who once mocked her had started their own quiet penance. Chad, the one who'd laughed the loudest, organized a local fundraiser for disabled veterans. Raised over $12,000 in Maya's name. He never returned to the diner. But he sent a letter, handwritten, no excuses, just 5 words. "I judged you. I'm sorry." Maya never responded. Some apologies aren't meant to be answered. She gave her time instead to the VA clinic on her days off, helping veterans navigate paperwork, prescriptions, and pain. Not as Sergeant Johnson, not as the town's reluctant icon, just as Maya. Just as someone who finally understood what healing actually meant. One evening, she stood in front of the wall of honor, eyes trailing over the faces. So many. Some who made it home, some who didn't. Her own photo was up there now, tucked between a Bronze Star citation and a yellowed snapshot of a grinning Marine she'd once stitched together in a sandstorm. She hadn't wanted her picture included. But Bob had pinned it up anyway. "You don't get to choose what people remember you for," he'd told her. "You just get to live the kind of life worth remembering." Outside, the wind carried the scent of mesquite and gasoline. The world kept spinning. Trucks rolled past. Kids threw gravel in the lot. The sky stretched wide and gold over West Texas. And inside, a waitress with scars and silence in her bones served coffee to strangers who now saw her not as a spectacle, but as a story. Not just a veteran, not just a survivor, but a living reminder of what courage looks like when no one is watching, of what dignity sounds like when it refuses to scream. And as the final light of day settled on the counter where her hands had poured thousands of cups, Maya stood with her back straight, her voice steady, and her name, finally, spoken with respect. Because sometimes the most extraordinary lives begin with one simple act of compassion. Someone choosing to see what everyone else ignored.